everyone. My name is Allison McSwain. I'm the transfer coordinator here in the Office of Admissions at UNLV. So I'm so glad to be able to talk with y'all today just about UNLV admissions, particularly for transfer students, and then also some other opportunities that are available on campus and what it looks like to go through the admissions process. Now, I know many of you have probably been familiar with this information. There's not a great deal of change year to year, but a refresher is always nice. I will also include my contact information at the end of this presentation, and never hesitate to reach out to me directly or to connect students with me as well. So when we are talking about transfer students, we are talking specifically about folks who have already graduated high school and then continued on to earn college credit after that time. I know that CSN has the high school program as well, Nevada State High School or other dual enrollment programs. And if you happen to come across students in those areas, just be aware they do have their own admissions counselor. They are not considered transfer students for our purposes. They are considered freshman students, and we can always help connect them with their admissions counselor as well if that's the situation. Oh, so when a student applies for admission to UNLV, and we'll talk about that process momentarily, admissions consideration is objective. So as long as the student meets the requirements, they will be admitted. So we share that really transparently with students as well. So if a student already has an earned and posted Associate of Arts, Business, or Science from one of the NSHE institutions, or has at least a 2.5 GPA in their transferable coursework, that student will be admitted to UNLV. So they always have that to carry around in their back pocket. Just a note that the guaranteed admission for the degrees does not include the applied degrees or the Associate of General Studies. There is also a little bit of flexibility. So if a student is very close to that 2.5 GPA, but not quite there, we can work with them and potentially admit them as well. So just something else to note. Students can transfer to UNLV at any point in time. We don't have any set number of credits or any specific classes that are required. We always tell students, though, if you have fewer than 24 credits, so if you have less than a year of full-time transfer work, be prepared to submit your high school credentials as well. We may need some additional information to your college coursework to have enough information to offer an admissions decision. So the actual process of transferring credits and transferring into UNLV for admissions purposes is pretty straightforward. We have an online application. We'll talk dates and deadlines in just a moment, but currently our applications for both spring of 2021 and for fall of 2021 are available. So the first step is to submit that online application through our website. That is what starts the process for the student. Once they've applied, we ask that they submit an official transcript from each college that they've attended, if it's more than one. For CSN transcripts or transcripts from other NSHE institutions, we do recommend that NSHE to NSHE transfer option, which is fast and free to students. Once we've received the application and all needed transcripts, evaluation will start. And we have a team of folks on our processing area that actually look course by course to determine, hey, what has this student taken? How does this class transfer and articulate into UNLV? And then they're also calculating GPA based on the transferable coursework. Now, as long as a course is from a regionally accredited institution like CSN, college level and academic-based coursework will transfer to UNLV. Once a student has been admitted, they have access to see their transfer credit report. So they can actually see the feedback for what has been evaluated, how it has articulated to UNLV. And then once admitted, they'll work with an advisor in their area of study for planning based on those remaining degree requirements. As promised, some deadlines for you. So currently, both our spring of 2021 and fall of 2021 applications are out. The deadline to apply for the spring is December 1st, so a student would want to apply and have the material submitted by December 1st for consideration for this spring. For next fall, the deadline is July 1st, so there is still some time. Although I will say in both instances, we always recommend applying early so that students have plenty of time to get admitted, to know that they're admitted, to work with their advisor, to register for classes, to look at the financial aid package, to do anything that they might need to do to prepare to make the transition over to UNLV. Just to give you a sense of our calendar every year, typically our applications open up in early August. This past August, August 1st is when the applications opened up this year. So we generally stick to a similar calendar year to year. So we do have some options in case a student applies to UNLV and the application is denied, which would be based on GPA. So we do have an appeal option, and students are notified of this in a denial letter. It is also available on our website. So any denied transfer student can appeal the decision and say, hey, I'd really like a more holistic consideration of my application. We can certainly accommodate that. In that case, we would ask for a personal statement. We would ask for 2 letters of recommendations. And then there's a cover sheet that we ask for as well. I am the liaison. I work as the admissions liaison to this committee, and they meet about 1 time a month, but they really truly consider on a case-by-case basis, like what is going on with these students? Would this be a positive and successful situation if they were admitted to UNLV, despite not meeting those objective requirements? So a really nice option for students who have some extenuating circumstances or additional things that should be taken into consideration. Reconsideration is another option. So if a student, for example, is applying for spring of 2021, but they're still finishing up this fall semester at CSN, we would still want them to apply. They would still want to apply now and submit their material now to meet that December 1st deadline. But for example, if their application was denied and then they later had updated coursework from this fall, once the fall grades are posted, they could certainly work with us and say, hey, I've got updated coursework. Can you reconsider my application? We can absolutely do that. They would just need to work directly with me or with another admissions counselor at UNLV. One additional option for students is a reconsideration based on a pending degree. So similar to the reconsideration for grades, if a student is applying and is denied to UNLV, but is on track to complete an Associate of Arts, Business, or Science before that term that they've applied for admission to UNLV, they can provide us with documentation showing that everything is in line to earn that degree. So another situation, they are welcome to work directly with me or with another admissions counselor or with the transfer program to be able to provide that documentation and be reconsidered. Okay, so of course, admission is the first step. Once a student is admitted, we ask for them to accept their admission. We use a My UNLV portal. It works really similarly to My CSN. So a student can follow along with the application status and ultimately log into that portal once admitted to accept admission. Now, accepting admission is non-binding. We don't ask for a deposit or any kind of paperwork to go along with that, but it is the step that allows a student to move forward towards advising and class registration. Once a student has accepted their admission, they will schedule with their advising center. So this is a required step for all new students before being eligible to actually register for classes once class registration opens. We also hold a new student orientation specifically for transfer students. We have already gotten word that our spring 2021 orientation will be held online. Orientation is not a requirement for transfer students, but it's a really excellent way for folks to start the process of getting acclimated to UNLV and learn about a lot of campus resources and opportunities and ways to navigate around UNLV's campus as well. And then, of course, a student should be prepared to submit any remaining materials. It might be the FAFSA, or if their FAFSA was selected for verification, or residency documents, or immunizations, or anything else that might be needed for them to be prepared to make the transition over to UNLV. Just a brief snapshot of the cost. So for an in-state student, UNLV is about $8,600 per year, and for an out-of-state student, about $24,000 per year. And these costs are estimated based on a student who's going full-time at 15 credits per semester, based on the current year's cost as well. Now, I know for many students, an important consideration is residency. And an important thing to know about residency is that the only way that a student is automatically considered in-state based on the application for admission is if a student graduated from high school in Nevada. Otherwise, a student would need to apply for residency. Unfortunately, it does not automatically follow a student from CSN to UNLV if they'd already been approved at CSN, aside from the high school graduation. There is a residency application, and there is a specific category specifically for NSHE students who had already been approved for in-state status at another NSHE institution. It requires very little paperwork. That's the route that I would recommend for students in that situation. The acceptance letter will also notify students of their residency status. We can always answer some general questions, and then the residency applications are actually processed through the registrar's office, and they have some residency specialists over there as well. Okay, so other forms of financial aid aside from the in-state versus out-of-state status. Of course, federal aid is hugely popular. I would always recommend a student who is eligible to fill out the FAFSA and apply for federal aid. It's so much nicer to have it on file and end up not needing it than to wish you had filed it and be scrambling at the last moment. There's also the possibility of being selected for verification, and so that adds some time onto the end of packaging for federal aid as well. UNLV also has the alternate need determination form. So if a student is not eligible to file for federal aid, if it's an international student or an undocumented student, or for whatever reason ineligible to file for the FAFSA, UNLV does have an alternate need determination form through the financial aid office, and we can always help connect them with that if that's the case. Applying for the alternate need form early is really beneficial because there is more limited funding coming from UNLV. The Millennium Scholarship is another great way to take a nice chunk out of the cost at UNLV. At UNLV, the Millennium Scholarship pays $80 per credit, up to 15 credits per semester, so a max of $2,400 per year. Typically, a student would just have to update their account through the Nevada Treasurer's Office, as long as they're still within their eligibility for the scholarship. If you happen to be working with students who are not in-state residents, we do participate in the WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, and then UNLV has put in place the Rebel Challenge Transfer Scholarship. So both of these are for non-Nevada resident students as a way to help cut down on the cost of attending UNLV. I always also encourage transfer students in particular to look at any scholarship opportunities that may be available through their departments. And the deployment of these scholarships can vary department to department. Some have an explicit scholarship application. Some do not have an explicit scholarship application. It's automatic consideration. Some have individual scholarship applications. Some it's one mass form. Some areas have a lot of money. Others have less funding available. So once again, another reason just to apply early, to be able to connect early with the academic department as well. There are also always other areas on campus that may have funding. I know the student government typically has a series of scholarships available each year. Our non-traditional website has a nice link for a scholarships page, some that are explicitly available to non-traditional students, but it's also a good starting point and resource for students just looking for scholarships on campus. And of course, students can always look at external scholarships. My recommendation is always start close to home and then spread out from there. So take a look at organizations that you might be affiliated with or that are available in your community, and then expand out to there, even as broad as national scholarship databases. So quite a variety here. I will take just a moment and mention, some of you may remember the Tuition Plus program that was put into place for fall of 2020. I did not include it here because it is still in flux. We are waiting to hear the definitive word for what's happening with that program and if transfer students would be eligible for the coming year. So you can always stay tuned. You can always encourage students to stay tuned on our website or connect with me directly. Just a few miscellaneous items that come up a lot or that are really good to know about. We do have some application fee waivers. We have a lot available, especially if a student is an in-county student, but we also have fee waivers available for out-of-county students or out-of-state students as well, especially if there is financial need. Financial need is the real thing here. Students can always connect with us. We can always talk with them about what their options are. For admissions purposes, there are no credit limits. Credits do not expire. So we will evaluate all credits, regardless of if they were earned 50 years ago, regardless of if the student thinks that they are related to the major. We will evaluate every credit. And then once the student is admitted and working with their advisor, that's when it determines the pathway towards degree completion. So there is that parameter that at least half of the credits towards a UNLV bachelor's degree do have to be from a four-year institution, and the last 30 have to come from UNLV. But that is something that students would work with their advisor on. So we generally encourage a student apply for the semester that you really plan to enroll. We do have an option to defer an application. If a student, for example, applies for spring of 2021 and then something ends up happening and they say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to be able to start in the spring. I'm going to start in the fall instead. We do have an option to defer the application up to 1 calendar year. The application will be reevaluated. So if a student continues on at CSN or at another institution, that is fine. We will reevaluate. And there is a $60 application fee that applies with that process. Similarly, in general, we're not able to do just term changes. Students should generally apply for the term that they intend to enroll. But of course, if there is ever a question, don't hesitate to send folks our way. And this was a relatively recent change within the past year, that immunization records should be submitted before the semester starts to prepare for the year. Now, I know that with fall of 2020, there were some extraneous situations and extenuating circumstances because of the pandemic, but I'm talking in general. And of course, if there are extenuating circumstances as we move through COVID-19 times, students are always welcome to touch base with us. Okay, I just want to put on your radar, even though our campus is closed to visitors, even though the Office of Admissions is currently closed to visitors, we are still having virtual information sessions and next steps presentations specifically for transfer students. Our transfer events are every Tuesday at 11 a.m. We also have general UNLV info sessions that are absolutely open to transfer students as well, but they cover both freshmen and transfer information. Those happen 2 times a day, except for the Tuesday 11 a.m. transfer presentation. We also have a full calendar of academic sessions, so from each of the academic units, and then some additional resources on campus as well. We are still planning on having Rebel Preview. Some of that planning is still up in the air, still being solidified because will be all virtual this fall. So stay tuned on our calendar. This link here, unlv.today/events, will show you the full calendar of events, including Rebel Preview, once that date is solidified. And like I mentioned previously, we do have a new student orientation specifically for transfer students. For spring of 2021, that will be a virtual orientation, just like we had virtual transfer orientations leading into fall of 2020 because of the pandemic. Okay, as I wrap up here, I do just want to take a moment and mention some of the resources that are available on campus to students once they enroll at UNLV. Involvement is huge. We've got right around 400 different registered student organizations on campus. And even during this fall, with social distancing and safety precautions in place, these registered student organizations are still finding ways to get students involved virtually or in smaller gatherings or in outdoor gatherings or more where they have more space available. In addition to major advising, we also have a pre-professional advising center as well as pre-law advising for students who are looking to continue on in those areas after finishing up with a bachelor's degree at UNLV. One additional thing that's really nice and I think pretty unique to UNLV is that we offer a transfer seminar class. So there is a freshman seminar, a second-year seminar, but many transfer students come onto campus with a different experience and even with enough credits transferring in to be exempted from those requirements. So there is a transfer-specific seminar to help transfer students in particular with that transition and navigating UNLV. One of our biggest supporters is UNLV Libraries, and they offer support and then transfer specific activities through the library as well. For example, they have a transfer mixer with new students and returning students, as well as campus resources at the beginning of each semester. And then, of course, we've got a full slew of student support services. I've listed just a few here, but things like tutoring, really widely used. Things like a robust career services, even department-specific career services. For example, our Lee Business School is one of the areas that has their own business-specific career services area. There's a really comprehensive wellness program at UNLV. So, of course, we have the gym and we have a clinic and counseling and psychological services, but also just a really comprehensive overall program for student wellness that ranges from things like staying active and eating well, all the way out to financial wellness. And that was just a wonderful surprise when I found out about just the dimensions that student wellness takes on. And then research is a huge component as well. UNLV in the past couple of years was awarded the designation of being a Tier 1 research institution. Really, really exciting for the campus. And one of the particularly exciting things about that is that there is a heavy emphasis on undergraduate research. So even students coming directly out of high school and starting on campus at UNLV can get involved in research. So of course, transfer students can, even a little bit further along in their academic careers. And undergraduate research is available in all areas across campus. So a really nice way to get more involved and really add to what's going on in the major program as well. So that brings me to the end. If you have questions, I wish we could do the live back and forth, but if you have questions or if you run into students with questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me directly or to share my direct contact with students. I am the person who works specifically with CSN transfer students, so feel free to send me an email or give me a call. I am still connected by phone, even while working remotely, but I will say if you happen not to catch me on the phone, shoot me an email as well. We also do have general transfer support available at transfer@unlv.edu. This general account is manned by me, but also a small team of my colleagues who work with transfer students. So you're welcome to reach out to us either way there. I hope this has been informative and do not hesitate to reach out, and I hope we will work together in person soon.